Hi, everyone. Welcome back. Hannah and I have taken a little bit of a break, but welcome back to the Led by Life podcast. I'm your host, Rafaela, and this is Hannah. We're both your hosts here talking. Hannah had a great question, and I told her to hold it so that we could just hit record and get it started. Do you
Want
remember
me
what
to?
it was? Yeah.
Well, I'll give a bit of context because today we're exploring the 22nd gene key, which, if anyone's read the 22nd chapter, it is a big one. It's like 22 pages, and there's a lot of dense information in there, but it is just this beautiful transmission as well. And we were talking, it then got us onto the topic of talking about like who we know that has this defined, because Rafa, you were telling me that Travis, your partner, has the 22nd and you have the 12th that makes
Mhm.
up this.
Mhm.
And so then we were kind of talking about, our partners, and we were talking about our different, what we've got defined, what we've got undefined, the connections that we make. And then I didn't realize, but you told me that Travis is an ego manifester as well. So
Mhm.
you've got same channel, the 2145, that makes you both ego manifestors. And then the question that I asked was, I imagine that you would have a lot of things that you kind of understand and resonate with each other because of this similar kind of circuitry that you've got. But then at the same time, I'm curious because you have very different profiles. So Travis has the 1-3 profile and you've got the 2-4. And so they're quite different profiles. And so I'm just curious, like, how these kind of differences and similarities play out in your relationship. And yeah, what have you
Mhm.
noticed?
Well, um, I was gonna say that he's more introvert than I am, but I feel as if I've started to learn that introvert and extrovert like are more so in the ways that we get re-energized. I've heard it be. Um, and that's actually not true for me. Like I am, I actually I get re-energized and just recharged and everything actually by spending alone time. But I think in the biggest difference that we have in relation to our profiles is that I'm a 2-4, he's a 1-3, is that he can really be such an individual. And what I mean by that is like, yeah, we all have our own individuality, but for him, it's almost like it really puts him on the outside of groups. And he also doesn't really like being in too many groups. And when it comes to taking things in and doing things, like he really could do them like just completely by himself or with just very particular people and not even that many people. Whereas for me, um, my 2 is a very personal thing. It is. It's a lot more of like my inner world. But my second number, which is a 4, which is towards the external world for you, I sometimes have to be around people. And I wouldn't say I get as energized, like recharged and stuff by being around other people, but I definitely get um like I was even thinking about it just before we got on this episode. I was like, yeah, I was feeling energized, but I was feeling like pumped up, like I was like ready to go, sort of like hyper almost in a way. Like I had just finished reading the 22nd and I was letting that sit. And then I was taking in some food and I was like, all right, like I'm feeling like inspired and ready to go. I have no idea what's going to surface and like what's going to come. I could even tell right now and like how fast I'm speaking and how fast I was speaking. I was like, oh my God, so much is like flowing through me. And that usually comes from like whatever I'm engaged with. When for him, he was just like, he'll create it within himself. Just, yeah.
So another question, do you feel like your fourth line, Do you feel like it brings you a sense of like fulfillment and purpose? Because so I have the 2-5, so we've got that similarity in terms of like the second line hermit, the conscious, like very aware of how important it is for us to kind of be in our own space, in our own energy, also being manifestors. But I just see my 5th line come out of nowhere sometimes, but it really does bring me a sense of like fulfillment, seeing how I can help other people. And I wonder if it's a similar thing that you find, seeing where you can like see that sense of community or see that sense of how you impact people in your personal networks and in your community.
Yeah, no, for sure. And to add on that, I have a lot of tribal circuitry too. So for me, I've recognized like all of the different layers that go into my chart really just sort of like come about in different ways, especially when we're talking about like engaging with others or your world, or like, so you add the layer of the circuitry of having a lot of tribal circuitry, and then the energy type itself as being a manifestor and this initiator of energy that then goes out to like the world. And then being the 2-4 profile, where like the 4 is really about a lot of networking and opportunities that come through that. And then there was one other part that I was going to say, the heart center and the area of like just being able to provide and obtain and disperse resources is a whole nother part of that. And and then you just mentioned something where I was thinking back to the 12, because the 22 and the 12 have a lot of connection because they make up the channel. And I was going to say how even what you just mentioned, like, I don't know if this were the words you used, but the impact that you then have on others. And I was kind of going over this channel and I recognized like, oh, like that the 12 is also this gate where what you say and how you say it and how you deliver the message or whatever it is that you're expressing can really impact somebody. And it's so funny because the last couple months, I've been seeing a theme ever since I got back into working inside of a facility. And I've mentioned it on here before. Like I work in a substance abuse facility and I run groups. And it was interesting in a way that I hadn't experienced in the past. I would have a lot of people start to reflect this thing back to me of saying like, you just want to make us cry. Like you just want to get us emotional. And it would be this running theme that the patients would then like make a joke out of, that my groups are going to make you cry or they're intense or all these things. Like, and then the rumors start to go around the facility or whatever. And as I was kind of reflecting back on these gates and these energies, I sort of had it reflect back to me like how powerful my voice can actually be, and not even in what I'm saying, but the literal vibration that goes through that can like, impact somebody. And even up to even to coworkers or other people around me. And I've never had this reflected back to me as often as I've had recently.
That's beautiful. And I remember that conversation we had about the 12, and we were talking, I think the title was even the emotional impact of, or the emotional impact of the voice or something like that. I remember you sharing that and sharing how, just how beautiful it is to see that impact. And it's what people need. They might not recognize that it's what they need, but you're helping them to access those emotions that they might not be feeling or might not be aware of, and like giving a voice to that. And I think that's
Yeah. And it's interesting because it's not like, isn't it interesting how human design sometimes just correlates things that have nothing to do with it, but then you like, you read the system and you look at the charts and the different parts that are connected and everything, and it's like laid out there. And I mean that, but like, see where our conversation has gone today. Like, nobody in the group therapy or anything is saying like, this energy is coming from the solar plexus up to the throat, and but it's just so interesting to see how like that what I'm doing in real life is very clearly represented in the chart.
Yeah, it's just articulating who you are,
Yeah.
giving giving words to, or giving some sort of description to your energy. But then also, I think the thing that's really been sinking in for me with human design and the gene keys is that it's not something that we can just intellectualize. We have to feel into how that really feels for us, because even if you had the exact same design and circuitry and profile and energy type and everything as someone else, you're still going to express it in your own way. And so it's just like really, and I don't know if you found this as well, like with time, it's been like letting it sink in and then just observing yourself. It's like that passenger consciousness that they talk about. It's like becoming more of the observer of your life and seeing how your energy, manifests and expresses itself.
Yeah. You had sent me a voice note just the other day, yesterday or something, and you were like sharing with me like these things that have been coming up and related it to these themes, specifically like gates or gene keys and stuff. And it took me a second and I was like, I don't know how I would have like, you asked me like what's been coming up for you, and I don't know how to describe what in the world is coming up for me, because, and I don't know, maybe there's just so many things and I haven't been able to like reflect through journaling as much as I would like to right now. So I feel like I'm just sort of like getting through the days and doing what needs to be done and engaging in whatever. um and but the one thing that did come up, I was actually having a conversation with Travis, and something about like being almost so understanding to a fault. And I was thinking, like, is that like, would you call that like passivity? And, have we explored this yet in the gene keys? Maybe, maybe not. I'm not sure. But that's one thing that I've kind of was like being able to be so understanding to a fault. Yeah.
Mm. Do you feel like there's a particular part of your chart that this relates to the most?
You know, like initially I want to say like maybe the solar plexus.
The
Huh?
openness.
And then like maybe the crown center, the head center. So it's maybe somewhere in those two, because I and maybe the ajna, but not really, because it's not about being able to conceptualize anything. It's not being able to, even articulate or define things into concepts. It's really just this ability to be so understanding. And then I'm like, what's that word? Yeah, like, and I keep going back to this term of passive,
Mm.
not like passive aggressive,
Mm.
but literally the a way of like just. And I thought, well, okay, would that be like not caring? Is that what I'm trying to say? But then again, I don't think it's not caring, because I care. It's So even talking it out like right now with you, it's literally just being so understanding to a fault.
So when you say to a fault, then does it feel disempowering to be that way? Does it feel like you're out of your power? Because I ask this because this is kind of been coming up for me,
Mm-hmm.
like part of the deconditioning process, because we've been, we've gone like 2 and a bit years for you, almost 2 years for me, deep into our human design journey. The more and more I feel like I'm becoming aware of who I am authentically, my real self, not my conditioned self, I'm realizing how much I have come to be conditioned out of my power.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm wondering if you've had a similar feeling, experience. I'm wondering if it's something that's kind of, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
as well, like noticing where you keep yourself small, aren't in your power.
Yeah. So I think I was I was on it when I said like the solar plexus. And I can't remember if the solar plexus is also the energy center that kind of governs I'm just flipping through real quick. Relationships, maybe.
Uh,
I don't know. I'm going to pull it up in a second and kind of look and just see if that's one of the things. But because then, in a way, um, yeah, I could see it. It doesn't say, well, it does say spirit consciousness, emotional and social awareness, passion, desire, abundance of spirit, feelings, mood, sensitivity. So I don't know, maybe, but and I've been getting a lot of weird messages, not clear ones around like the solar plexus. So I find it interesting that that's where the 22nd is, and that's what we're talking about. But and you have a completely open
yeah,
emotional
completely open.
center.
Solar plexus, sacral, and spleen. So I'm just absorbing everything. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. But anyway, to go back and to what I was sharing with you is like, yeah, that's what I would say has
Mm.
been coming up, because since the last time that you and I recorded, we've had quite a different shifts and changes. We met,
Yeah.
Hannah and I met in person. That
Yes. Oh,
was so much fun.
yeah. Yeah, it was amazing. It was
Yeah,
so good. Met in person, and I've since moved house. You got a promotion. We've
right.
just had all these big shifts, and yeah.
Take it all in.
Yeah.
And that, I guess that's kind of like, when you were saying like all these different things, you were noticing all these different things come up. Um, I feel as if like I've been in the midst of a shift, and I'm seeing it that I think that this shift has actually been a lot longer than I could think it is. It was. Um, you know, just with like taking on a new role, and one that's going to really change up the types of tasks that I do. Um, one of those being not really as much individual therapy as I've been doing for the last 5 years. Um, and that each day I'm just like, I'm really, really excited. I'm really excited for what's gonna come. I'm really curious to just observe and witness like how my being is, and just like how I engage, and just all kinds of things. But it's also like a little fearful too,
Mm.
because when you've developed and curated a craft and a skill, and had, it's like, I don't know if I've ever shared this with you, but I have always known that I was going to be a therapist, like from the day I was 8 years old. And I have like a very vivid memory. I was literally in a therapy office, and I sat there on these really ugly looking couches. And I just remember saying to myself, this is what I'm going to do.
Wow.
And yeah. And so to like have gone through life experiences and then learn more about human design and all these different things, I'm like really ready to embark on something new. And it's kind of scary, but I'm really excited.
It's really scary to do something new, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's been something that's been coming up for me as well. Yeah, I'm working on something new too. And I've realized how, like, the only thing stopping me from pursuing this new path is my own self-doubt and like that inner critic and that just a conditioned mind, the stories of the conditioned mind, like, this won't work, nobody is going to want this, nobody's going to care. Yeah, it won't work out, that kind of thing. But it's just like that trust in yourself that we have to have, because my feeling has been like, it's been given to me, this like idea has been given to me for a reason, so I've got to pursue it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And what's the worst thing that's going to happen?
Well,
I mean, I didn't mean that literally, like, I meant it more rhetorically, just because I think that sometimes I've been listening to quite a bit of Abraham Hicks lately. And this is kind of where I was been thinking, like, the passivity thing, because in some of the teachings and the way I'm interpreting it, I'm just like, and not in a like I don't know the word, not in a like a dreadful kind of sense, but what I say to myself is like, but who cares? Or just like, and not even who cares, because we all care, and we care what people care and all of that, but more so like, is it really that serious? Or like, what are we all like fucking running to? Because like they say, like, you're never going to get it all done. So why not just try? And it's this very interesting thing that I think we have, and I don't know if this is what comes up for you, but like this feel of like this fear of failing at it. And it's just so funny, like, why do we fear like this idea of failure, or whatever that means?
Well, it's so funny that you said, you mentioned seriousness. Seriousness is my main shadow of the 40 gene key. You also mentioned like failure, and success and failure are a big part of the 46 as well. And it's all about your attitude, because like two people can be looking at the same thing, and one person can perceive it this way and another person can perceive it the other way. So it's like success and failure doesn't even really exist. It's just the meaning that we give it based on our attitude towards whatever we're perceiving as success or failure. So it's just so funny that you mentioned that. And yeah, I think I said to you in my message the other day, like, I've had so many of these shadowy things come to the surface, and I think that it's all actually like here to serve me. I think these shadows presenting is not a sign that I'm not meant to do this thing that I want to do. They're actually just showing me the things that I need to work through in order to kind of get what I want to get, if that makes sense. Talking in a lot of kind of vague terms, but basically, like, I had this kind of vision for the next big project that I want to create. And I've told you about it, Rafa. But I feel like I've been waiting for months and months and months to kind of have some clarity over my next project. And now that it's come, it's almost like the universe is saying, all right, like, if you want to do this, let's do this, but you've got to work through all of these areas that you don't think that you're deserving of it, that you don't think you're worthy, that you don't think you're good enough, that you are taking life too seriously, where you're getting too attached to the outcome, whatever it may be. Like, all these different shadows are coming up to the surface as like an obstacle for me to overcome in order to create this work that I want to create. So yeah.
Well, what immediately came to me was how purposeful the shadow is. And essentially, I feel like that's what the 22 or so pages was essentially sort of speaking, is that through our suffering, we evolve, we change, we grow, we ascend, we awaken. And it's and that's just it, like, it doesn't need to be any more complex or dense, because we've already read enough of that. And for whoever like that resonates with, great. And then if not, then that's fine too. But really, anything that is through a shadow or through a sense of suffering, like, at some point it will be useful and purposeful, even if it doesn't feel that way in the moment. But it's just also all part of the journey too, and part of life.
And that's what I love so much about the Gene Keys, is that it's not about getting somewhere. It's about like this journey of your lifetime. And one of the biggest things that came up for me reading the 22nd, and we kind of said this before we got on here, it's not really a gene key. And I don't think Richard Rudd even suggests you try and make sense of it in the mind. But just to like feel into the transmission and the information that he shares. But what was I saying? Oh, one of the biggest things that I kind of felt into was this notion of karma, and how, like, the consequences of our actions and our thoughts and our behaviors and all of these things, but in a way of like, once you're aware of it, you then need to take responsibility for it. And I think that this is like part of this path of the Gene Keys, and like becoming aware of our true nature, which includes becoming aware of our shadows, of our limitations, of our conditioning, becoming aware of all these different things, and then like taking responsibility for that. And we don't have to do that, but if we want to, fulfill the purpose that our soul came here to fulfill in this lifetime, then it is like taking responsibility. What can I do about this?
Yeah. Well, and because in the like second half or towards the end of this chapter, he also goes into, I can't even remember, so I'm not even gonna try to remember, but there's this I've forgotten it. Oh my god. All right, well, if it comes back, it comes back. It left. Yeah.
Was
Well,
body different bodies?
no, not the bodies, like the sufferings, the different types of cities that transition the different types of sufferings that we see. And there's a whole bunch of lists. There's like 7 or 8 or 9, or I don't know, so many numbers in this chapter too.
Is this all about the initiations? The 9 initiations or something?
Maybe it was the initiations, but what you were saying just made me think about like the taking the responsibility over our actions, and all of it hopefully leading us to collectively move out of the shadow frequencies, or just make it more so of a balance, because maybe for a while the majority have been experiencing life through shadow frequencies, I think. And I actually was asked to respond to this survey question of Americans being in more stress this year than previous years. And it said, like, what are your insights on that? And, um, you know, having it relate, like, does it relate to the economy and financial stressors or something else? And I don't know if this question could have come at a perfect time, because I felt that my responses were just not only what I've witnessed individually working with people, but also in reading a lot of the Gene Keys, and how there is a level of fear at the root of everything. And I don't know, I've never done surveys on Americans really, or I just talk to a lot of them. But I do feel like in America, the majority of us are probably living out life in a shadow frequency more often than not. And I can just, that's just my observation, but fear being at the root. So I don't know, I just kind of went off on a tangent of, I don't know.
I think it's really relevant for these times because there's a lot of turmoil in the world at the moment. There's a lot of really heavy energy. There's a lot of suffering going on. We're seeing a lot of it.
Right.
And I think that it, as individuals, we can feel kind of helpless, and we can feel like our efforts aren't really contributing, or we don't even really know what to do. But I think that, like, as we're moving towards this new paradigm, which is all about individuality, it's taking responsibility for our side of the street and taking responsibility for our energy, the energy that we put out into the world, taking responsibility for our thoughts, our actions, our behaviors, the way we treat other people, taking responsibility for our emotions. I think that's quite relevant with this, with this gate and this gene key being in emotional solar plexus, like really cleaning up our side of the street in order to kind of, like, even if we can't, do you know what I'm saying? Like, it's
no, I do. And it's, you kind of summarized for me what I was having a hard time saying. But yeah, because in those whether it was the initiations or something, he was basically sharing the main sufferings, like war and poverty and guilt and shame and repression. And maybe there isn't fear in all of those things, but maybe a fear of something, or a really just lack or struggle within there. And so yeah, I just think that we can all take a little bit, you're right, like a little bit more responsibility. And I feel that that's sort of like what our conversations, in the podcast really on some level emphasizes, is that we come together, and you and I, and we talk about these different concepts and these things and these experiences, but really it's just an opportunity to openly reflect about on the experiences that we are having and experimenting with the world, and sort of bringing this really gentle questioning over anything to ultimately bring us back more to our soul's purpose and more love and light. And really, and I mentioned this in my response to those people, was like, so that we can move out of a state of fear and more into love and more into light. And I think that our conversations hopefully can be that.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that using these tools, these systems that can bring awareness to where we may have work to do, where we may have karma, shadows, conditioning, all of these things, as we can cultivate more awareness of our own patterns and behaviors and all of these different things that we've talked about, this is where we can like really play our role in then showing up more authentically as ourselves, which then will just like flow on out to the rest of the world. And he talks about it, Richard Rudd talks about it as, you know, eventually there will be this like spontaneous awakening. And you know, it'll be interesting to see what happens in the next few years. I think there's going to be a lot that happens before that, but I think the thing that's coming to me, like the message that's coming to me, is like, be the change you want to see.
Yeah. What a wonderful way to get back into it. Into our conversation. Yeah. I felt like this one moved fast. Yeah, like I don't really feel like I have a recollection of how long we've been talking, but who knows, who cares? But it was so nice to get back and to talk and to explore all of this. So yeah, thank you guys for joining.
Thanks for being here.
And we'll see you in the next one.
Next time.
Bye.
Bye.